And we are live. Hello, everyone. This is your Right Geek, honorary man king, and leader of the Awkward Cough Squad, here with another stream with number one Marmaduke fan, in which we will be discussing both some X-Men material, because that's what's hot this week, and then on the back end of our stream, we will also be discussing some Iron Man comics as well. So welcome, number one Marmaduke fan. How are you today?
Hey everybody! Today's comic book made me racist against mutants.
Yes. So, yes, as I said, we're going to be starting with some hot X-Men material. I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Hellfire Gala marketing, because that's something we can get out of the way fairly quickly. Then we are going to address Way of X #1, which I found extraordinarily interesting, and obviously number one Marmaduke fan, based on his tweets, found it rather engaging as well. So we will be discussing that in some detail. And then, once again, like I said, we'll be doing Iron Man on the back end. So, the Hellfire Gala. Let's talk about that.
I think there's a
So,
meme
what
where it
I'm
says
opening...
fashion designed by women, and it's like a French guy with really poofy sleeves, and then fashion designed by
Yeah.
men, and it's just a crusader.
Yeah. So this is the free thing that they put out this week, or this past week, that is intended to advertise this event that's going to be line wide across all of the X books. And and I'm sure if anybody is listening now, or anybody is listening later on, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about exactly how this is being advertised. But I just want to show you so we can laugh about it together here on the stream, because it's really quite bad. So that's CB Cebulski, I think. A drawing of CB Cebulski, I think, in front of a hamburger. And let's see, what does he say? What does he say here? I'm going to zoom in because I have grandma eyes. The summer's most spectacular shindig is almost here, and you're all invited. The Hellfire Gala is an X-Men X over, unlike anything else. This time around, the battles are of wits, and the slaying is on the green carpet. But make no mistake, the twists, turns, and surprises in store here will make a mark of Marvel's mutants like never before. The tome you hold in your hand, True Believer, is the official guide to the gala, including first looks at the highest fashion Krakoa has to offer. Plus, get the definitive word on the crossover from the host herself, Emma Frost. All this and more awaits in these very pages. So, what's going on here, as I'm sure our audience is well aware, they have decided to advertise this is supposed to be an event, and they're advertising it like it's a fashion show. And, the question that immediately comes to mind when I see this marketing material is, who exactly are you marketing this to? Because if you're marketing this to your typical comic book reader, you are barking up the wrong tree. Because or even if you're trying to reach out to, let's say, a female comic book reader, as a female comic book reader, you're still barking up the wrong tree, because this I'm speaking from personal experience, but all the female comic book readers that I know of, that I have interacted with, care not one whit about fashion. They're not Project One Way viewers. Let me just put it that way. So this idea that talking about, this is what they're going to be wearing on the green carpet, is actually going to attract, even if you're desiring to reach out to female comic book fans, what? I'm actually kind of speechless. Do you actually know what female comic book fans are actually like? Because speaking as a female comic book fan, I don't think you do. So, Marm, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm trying to think about it because when I first saw the pictures, to be honest, my first thought was, "Oh, those are kind of some cool costumes." And then I saw memes of people reading like the very flowery descriptions of how mysterious they all look. Uh, Let me think.
Well,
I think maybe
I'm
for
gonna
men,
run
it's
over.
like, "Oh, that girl has a pretty dress on." But then, like when guys see guys in fashion outfits, it's like our gaydar goes on. No, no, I don't want to
Yeah.
look metrosexual. I don't want to look like a mysterious bearded Russian vampire. Well,
Yeah.
maybe Jordan Peterson. I don't know. Jordan Peterson says that girls want billionaire vampire werewolves or something. So maybe I do want to look like a mysterious Russian vampire.
Yeah, yeah, you were talking about the flowery descriptions. Let's read some of these here because they're yeah. Those Krakoan fibers and shades of blue and white arranged in the house of Carnation's signature asymmetry beg the question, where does the shape end and the shapeshifter begin? Not feathers, not corn silk, but something else. Careful to those who reach out to touch her plumage. We don't know how much is the lady herself. Nothing is an accident with Jumbo's work. The shadows that fall on the gown's wearer are as much a part of it tabbed off. Okay, that's a mouse going.
Never have art placards that are more complicated than the work of art itself.
Yeah, the shadows that fall on the gown's wearer are as much a part of the ensemble as the boning or buttons. Miss Darkholme attends unaccompanied. For now, she says, a threat always in her voice. So yeah, and there I actually retweeted one female comic book reader reading the description for Colossus, which is also hilariously flowery and ridiculous and doesn't really fit the character of Colossus. Let me just put it that way. I will say that I thought Nightcrawler's outfit actually did kind of fit him, but otherwise, so this is Nightcrawler's outfit right here, and that does kind of work because
Yeah,
he is supposed to
kind
be
of more
sort
like
of
a
a
French
swashbuckling.
musketeer.
Yeah, it does kind of work because he is that swashbuckling sort of pirate character. So, um, but just overall, like if you want to sell this as an event, the question that immediately comes to mind, first of all, besides the question I asked before, which is who exactly are you marketing this to? Because no female comic book fan, like I'm just gonna say, most female comic book fans are pretty gender nonconforming. I'm just gonna say that right here. I'm pretty gender nonconforming. All the female comic book fans I know are fairly gender nonconforming, if not outright queer in some way. Um, so they're not going to be the type of women that are going to be all that impressed with a discussion of fashion and who's wearing what on the green carpet. They're just not. That's not the kind of personalities that tend to get attracted to comics, at least among women. But the other thing is, um, what is the story? That's the other question I have. You're talking about, ooh, here's what everybody's wearing. Oh, look at how, let's share our flowery language about how beautiful their costumes are. But what's the story behind this event? If you're going to if you want me to read this, and to be honest with you, I am going to read this just because I'm a comic book reviewer. So I feel kind of obligated to cover it as a reviewer. But if I were just an ordinary fan that didn't have, some obligations on that end, what is actually driving me to pick this up from a story perspective? What about this story is actually going to be exciting for me as a reader? And there is simply just no discussion of what's actually going to happen at this gala that is going to be something more than just people sitting around and talking in beautiful costumes, right? There's just no hint anywhere that there's going to be any progression for any character or any sort of real plot as people understand what a plot is. So that's the other problem with this kind of marketing. So
It's a little too
I don't
fashion
know what's
showy.
going on in the
It's a
Yeah,
little too fashion showy for people who don't like fashion, and the people who actually like
yeah,
fashion can make fun of a lot of these outfits. Like half of them, I just say, "Oh, that's an okay little outfit," you know. Uh,
yeah,
maybe I guess it is a free little preview book, right? So that kind of like
yeah.
at least it's not something you pay $5 for it, right?
At least, yeah, yeah. The only reason that I got this is because it was free. Like I would not have picked it up otherwise because nothing else in the marketing I've seen on Twitter has attracted me to this in any way. So I wasn't gonna pick it up if it weren't free. But yeah, like so the people that actually are into things like Project Runway and stuff like that, like Mama Geek, for example, watches Project Runway. Um, you're not going to reach her because she's not inclined to read comics anyway. She's mundane. Uh, so again, who is this for? Question mark. Because uh, if you're trying to reach someone who is likely to be a comic book fan, this is not the way to do it. that's
Now, something
that's
about the
my thoughts on the
Hellfire Club
situation.
is they've always had kind of like this decadent vibe to them. Like I remember one of their leaders used to have one of those good old like mutton chop mustaches and Victorian suits. So I can kind of see the
Yeah,
Hellfire Club having these, decadently dressed, rich outfits. But like, what has the Hellfire Club like made peace with the X-Men or something, right? Like what you said earlier about what's the story. All I'm getting is
yeah,
that they're going to wear a bunch of outfits. Half of them I kind of looked at it, thought, oh, that's kind of cool, and half of them I kind of chuckled a
yeah,
bit, like, really, you're going dressed as like a peacock?
yeah, and yeah, and that's a good question too. Like, has the Hellfire Club made peace with the X-Men? Apparently, they have. To be honest with you, because I found a lot of what I was hearing about more recent runs of X-Men very off-putting. I'm not 100% conversant with what has been going on with new X-Men and new X-Men, basically. The X-Men that I'm familiar with are the ones from Claremont, essentially. So, like, I'm coming at this from someone who's basically read, like, Bronze Age X-Men, and I'm like, so the Hellfire Club, they were like bad guys. So now we're like, now something has happened, and now they're buddy buddy with the good guys. How exactly did this happen? And should we actually be okay with this? Like, that's kind of where I'm looking at it. How about you, Marmaduke fan?
I've actually kind of like gone back a few pages to just look at this Emma Frost outfit where she has the giant poofy feathers and a boob
Yeah,
window like in the shape of an X right around her boobs. It's a boob window and a gigantic feather pillow.
yeah, yeah.
I actually get the one with
Okay.
Storm and like the cloud cape and the lightning. I actually kind of
Yeah,
like that idea, like because it would billow out in
yeah,
a cool way. I think someone once said you should always have characters smoking because the way smoke billows is always super cool, right? So anytime you can have like
yeah,
billowing capes or billowing smoke is
yeah,
always awesome.
yeah. Except I think that like company policy now at Marvel is nobody smokes, or the
Not
good
even
guys don't
Wolverine,
smoke.
who can heal from
Yeah,
cancer.
not even
Yeah.
Wolverine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was funny because if you go back to like my old Iron Man comics, Tony smokes. You see him in like when he's like chilling at home watching TV, he'll have like a drink and he'll be smoking like a pipe or a cigarette in a fetching smoking jacket because like in the 60s that was considered totally normal. Lots of people did that. Like which makes me you know I've been thinking about the fan comic I'm writing that is Iron Man focused, that I was thinking in my earlier issues I could have him smoking because in the early issues he did. Like
Bada bang. Yeah.
bada bing. Yeah. Comixology has crapped out. I was going to try to page back out to the page you were talking about with Emma Frost here. If it will let me.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, boom. Yeah. So there's the boob window you're talking about, and the
Okay, that's her
yeah.
regular outfit, but it's her secondary outfit, right? So that one's actually kind of like a
Yeah.
nice dress. It's the one that looks like a
Yeah.
giant. She looks like a giant poof of feathers.
So you're talking about this.
That
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to
So
give him props for making the boob window the most important thing of the entire design.
um yeah, but so we can certainly laugh at some of the designs that don't seem to be all that high quality, but I think it's more important to emphasize the fact that this is just the wrong way to market a comic book event to people who are likely to be comic book readers. That's the real problem with
I
this
agree.
entire thing.
Hint at story,
Yeah.
or if you're gonna do like the oh, we're inviting you to a gala thing. Like I've seen things like this. Like you're invited to the wedding of Bruce Wayne and Catwoman, right? If you're gonna do that, I don't know, maybe do a few pages and then a few pages of story.
Or the wedding of the Scarlet Witch and the Vision, like
yeah,
in the old Avengers comics. Yeah, but the other thing is, back if you're talking about stuff like that, you know, you're invited to the wedding of so and so. In the past, it was confined to one issue, and then the other thing is when you had you're invited to the wedding of so and so, there was always something that happened at the wedding, like some sort of villain would come in and crash the party, and then it would you know, become the fight that most people expect when they read a comic book. But I've seen no indication yet that there's going to be anything like that happening in this gala that they have decided to extend it over 12 issues, which I think, I mean, you can have a gala, but I think it's really, really excessive to extend it over 12 issues line wide. That I don't think you're going to be producing something exciting there unless there's something they're just not telling us in the marketing, which would be incredibly stupid on that part. But again, I'm repeating myself. This marketing campaign is just stupid in general.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So any closing thoughts? My only closing thought is just give us more story.
Yeah. Tell us what actually, like, if there is going to be, if it's going to be more like on the political intrigue end, at least give us some suggestion of what that political intrigue is going to entail. Because I like political intrigue. It's something that I'm not necessarily opposed to. I'm fans of several science fiction shows that were often centered on political intrigue of various types. But again, the marketing campaign, it doesn't really say anything even about political intrigue, which, it's not action heavy, granted, but at least it would give us something by way of an actual story,
So you're doing Way of X next to continue the X-Men theme?
Yes, so to continue the X-Men theme, we are now going to start talking about Way of X, #1, which I decided I wanted to stream about this because this is actually generating some buzz for addressing some things that a lot of the other books in the X line are not addressing right now. So that's what we're going to be talking about with this. So, all right, where do you want to begin, Marmaduke fan?
Okay, it seems like recently in X-Men history, they have developed their own country, and they have developed a way of reliably resurrecting someone. One of the most annoying aspects of modern comics is, well, does death mean anything if it becomes a joke that everybody comes back? However, this story seems to be taking this to the logical conclusion where it's now so reliable that you can just always bring someone back, that the younger generation of mutants are starting to have like a casual attitude towards death. And Nightcrawler, as the Catholic, has some reservations about this and seems to be afraid that maybe this technology is going to lead to something evil, even if he can't put his finger on what's wrong quite yet. I really like that theme, but my problem with this issue is it's very confused, and I think it's written by someone who doesn't know how to write a Catholic character, because Kurt just kind of like feels weirdly like he feels like a hippie who, there's a scene where he prays to Jesus, but then he just goes straight back to being like a weird hippie. He doesn't feel like he acts the way a Catholic believer is supposed to. He's trying to start his own religion, right? Like, even if you're a Catholic and you're kind of like mad at the Catholic Church, you're not about to go start your own mutant religion over that.
Right. Right. So, as I was saying to Marm in the pre-show, that I was inclined and did give this issue a fairly positive review because of the overall theme of something is wrong here. This casual disregard for life, and this basic this casual disregard for life, and the fact that they're treating like death and resurrection basically as a game. Bringing that up actually is that was something that I deeply appreciated, regardless of the flaws in writing a Catholic character. I guess, I think what I have here is a little bit of Stockholm syndrome at this point, because I have suffered through years and years and years of creatives of various types and various genres not knowing how to write Catholic characters. I'm at the point now where if someone is at least trying, I give them a lot of benefit of the doubt, I think. So, but yes, there is in fact some pretty significant flaws in this. It is very clearly written by a writer who isn't all that conversant with what Catholics believe and how they would react to a situation like this, in which, essentially you've effectively established immortality, but it's not like easy immortality for everyone, because what I got from this too is that people don't all get resurrected. Well, there's a queue, basically. There's a line. Some people are prioritized in the line for resurrection, and some people have to wait. So,
and it seems to be based on
you're setting up.
So would that mean it's only mutants if it's based on Cerebro, because Cerebro is a mutant finding machine? Right.
Yeah. Okay. And there's also, there's indications that the prioritization is for those that are more. I'm trying to think of the right word. They're more militant, let's just say. So you have in this issue, it shows that one way that that these mutants get themselves resurrected and get their powers restored is they fight each other in gladiatorial combat, and thereby kill themselves via gladiatorial combat. And so the ones that are especially combat ready and militant are the ones that get to the head of the line. So we seem to be generating this sort of this natural selection process where we are favoring those who are especially violent and militant over those that are more pacifist and gentle.
Right. And if you're useful for their strike forces, basically, you keep getting resurrected to sending you back out in the battlefield. To assault all of those Catholic priests sitting in a basement watching documentaries. Someone's got to go beat those guys up.
Yeah, speaking of which, so the issue, so after we see this this nightmare that Professor X has about some evil thing that's lurking under the surface in Krakoa, we catch up with what Kurt's doing right now, and he is basically on a mission to raid this place in Venice, in which, a bunch of Catholic folks are sitting around watching documentaries about evil mutants.
And building really badass statues of mutants too. Like they take one look at that and think, these hateful bigots, they're making statues of a bunch of evil mutants. And it's like, man, that's the most flattering stuff I've ever seen.
Yeah, let me see if I can find the really awesome. Yeah, so in this panel here, you can see kind of in miniature the really awesome statues you're talking about. Yeah, look at this stuff. It's every crappy thing mutants ever did. It's like a museum of hate. So we have, as you were saying, we have these badass statues of these evil mutants. But, yeah, so... the interesting thing that Marm, you pointed out when you were tweeting about this issue is that it's not like they're making this up out of whole cloth. These are things that the evil mutants actually did. So it that's one of the flaws in mapping the X-Men onto races that have been oppressed or whatever, is that in real world, when you're talking about real world groups that have been oppressed, like say the Jews or African Americans, former slaves, and so on, you can't really say, or you can't really point to events in which they were actually a legitimate threat to people who were not of their race, right?
I'm just imagining Apocalypse running around saying, "Oy vey, time to destroy the Earth."
So that that's the huge flaw in saying, oh well, the X-Men just they represent African Americans, or they represent Jews, or they represent gay people. I mean, all of those groups can certainly relate to things. In the old days, the X-Men were written in kind of a universalist way. This is just what it's like to be different and to be an outsider, right? And that's something that a lot of people from many different groups could connect into. One of the problems with the modern day X comics that I've seen is that they try to explicitly link it to different groups, and then what that does is that you're now what you're doing is you're excluding. You're not making it something that anyone who feels like an outsider, who feels different, who feels like he is not being treated well or not being respected, can link up to it. Now you're saying, no, it's really just about this one group. It doesn't belong to you, which is a very excluding, that excludes, and it narrows like who exactly can link up to these characters. But as I was saying, the other reason why mapping mutants onto these real world groups who can point to ways in which they've been oppressed is that in the case of mutants, there are mutants who do indeed and have threatened, Homo sapiens, have threatened common humanity. So there's actually a legitimate reason why some humans would fear mutants, because there are mutants out there who have mistreated human beings and have behaved in very evil and genocidal ways. So
bad guys shouldn't be telling the truth unless you're trying to represent the bad guy as like a serious like intellectual bad guy. Goofy bad guys, you don't want to represent them telling the truth. Otherwise, everyone's wondering, well, why are they the bad guys if what they're saying is basically true?
Right. So, uh, or at the very least, the bad guys could say something true, but you need to have a response to it. You can't just say, oh, they're bringing up all these evil things mutants did. They're the bad guys. You should say, like, they're bringing up all these evil things mutants did. How can we grapple with that?
Yeah.
Like, how do we respond to that? Right? Because it is true.
They're
That
just going
doesn't
to add
mean,
one more stat.
that
Hey, remember that time
doesn't,
we were sitting minding our own business and a bunch of guys came and melted our brains? Let's make a statue for that
yeah,
one.
yeah. So it's like, um, you know, obviously you can make an argument against, oh, evil mutants did that, therefore all mutants are bad, because there's no such thing as collective guilt. I mean, you can make that argument and should, but to say that, to say that we can't tell the truth about things that mutants have done, otherwise you're the bad guy, right? That's a whole different ball of wax. I think that
I'm
there
sure
should
that
be,
I'm sure that's the direction they intended to go. They just it's
yeah,
an example of like being inept, right? Like if there was an art show
yeah,
where they had all these statues and some creepy politician was giving a speech on the threat of evil mutants, then we put two and two together and say,
yeah,
oh, okay, they're using the bad guys as a propaganda tool to gin up hatred
right,
against all mutants. Now, again, this is something
yeah,
where kind of like this the X-Men have had this theme, kind of like in the 70s and 80s as sort of a simple metaphor of bigotry. 40
right,
years later, has the Earth still not kind of like moved past the, like we have normal superheroes and there isn't bigotry against normal superheroes. So why would there still be a
yeah,
special bigotry against mutants after all this time? Why isn't it started to kind of like normal out or mellow out?
yeah. Why haven't people started to realize, which is what naturally happens in the real world over time, as you get exposed to mutants who are in fact benevolent and good and wish to coexist and help humanity. Why hasn't that diminished the fear and hatred of these people who are different, right? Because that is in fact the natural progression. Once you get exposed over time that to people of a particular group who don't fit this fearful stereotype you might have in your mind, that's going to challenge your stereotype and it's going to start to uh, dissipate. That is in fact the correct way to fight bigotry of any kind. It's not to lambast and pour hate on people who are bigoted, because that's only going to cause them to double down on their bigotry. The What you really need to do is you really just need to gradually challenge their wrongheaded beliefs about whichever group they're bigoted about, through just gentle exposure and trust and friendship, not through we're just going to punish them and smack them and push them out of society. That's not exactly how you change anybody. That's not how you change anybody's mind. The second you put them on the defensive, then they're going to think of all the ways that you're wrong and they can keep the beliefs that they have, right?
You're gonna get
So
age restricted if you keep showing this panel of a bunch of evil Catholic priests watching a movie together. We can't. I can't watch it. It's so offensive.
yeah, yeah. So there's an evil mutant. So yeah, they're watching evil mutant movies of things that actually happened in canon. Oh gosh, what are we gonna do?
Okay, this line, I
Um,
wanted to say something about this line. Like, it's a little weird to have Pixie basically say within earshot of Kurt that she thinks all religions are brainwashing when it's probably known that he's
yeah,
a devout Catholic. He's a Catholic priest, as not just a devout Catholic, lay Catholic. That would be the kind
mhm,
of thing where there would be like a whole issue devoted to like Pixie's an atheist and Kurt's a Catholic, and she's got to like get over her angst at Kurt because he's a good guy, right? And here it's just kind of like
right,
weirdly
yeah,
thrown out in the middle of something, and it's like
yeah,
this could have been a story, but they didn't like develop it at all. It just feels like a weird one-liner that is I'm sure the thinking is, well, we want to underscore the religious theme of this story, but it ends up just being like this weird banana in a cookie jar.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to get to the critical thing that kind of elevates the plot after they get into this conflict with these evil Catholic priests who've been brainwashed by watching movies of things that evil mutants have actually done.
Oh yeah, there's like the New World Order plans for them too.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to basically modify their minds. Everything is made of light.
And then I don't know who this music iPhone kid is. I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be he's music powered or if he's literally like, is he literally supposed to be iPhone powered? Because his power shield looks like an iPhone shape.
It does, yeah. All right, so no need to engage, says Kurt. We've got what we come from. Let's go home. And then here's what happens.
Oop.
Pixie
decides. So basically, in the fight, the Zoomers are getting into it, and it sounds like they kind of planned right from the beginning that Pixie was going to die, knowing that they're just going to bring her back to life anyway. So she just sort of casually walks up and lets the guy shoot her so that they can traumatize the Catholic priest so they'll never, ever hate mutants again.
Right. Yeah, and the kids are all like, "Woo, that's awesome!" So they have this completely cavalier attitude about what just happened. This kid just basically walked up to him, intending to make this guy feel guilty for killing her, and just said, "Go ahead," dared him to blast her in the face with a gun. And these kids think it's the coolest thing ever. And meanwhile, Kurt is absolutely horrified. And, when I saw that, that's what inclined me to give the positive review that I gave, because
and I like that they think he's a square, right? Like they just call him like old fashioned and you're not fun anymore. This is what the entire story should be, like the goofiness of like the evil Catholic documentary society kind of that kind of soured me right off the bat. But this element of Kurt, it's a really, really good idea to have a character like Kurt be the cautious voice who isn't so sure about all of the brave new technology, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so she'll come back. We kicked Death's butt, remember? We all come back. But like this, it's wrong. So, yeah. So that's why I said, ooh, now this is... now we're getting at something that that is actually interesting and actually needs to be said, right? And that's what kind of excited me about this issue to begin with, and why I needed to talk about it with someone, because, even with all of the flaws that we are discussing in this issue, at the same time, there is something here that redeems it to a certain extent, that makes it something that is worth reading, in my opinion, because it is addressing something that it's addressing an elephant that has been sitting in the room ever since this kind of new era of the X-Men started, basically.
Something just occurred to me, like right as we were talking. So if someone was like more knowledgeable about Catholicism, like one of the things they could do is they could have Kurt reference Christian persecution, right? Because the Christian church would have this problem where some Christians would hand themselves over to persecution, and then they buckle under pressure and they deny Christ, right? So you could have Kurt like tell a story like that as a way of making the point that you don't want to be too cavalier about going to your own death, right? So he has like this fear or this holdup, but we never really hear him explain why would Catholicism or like the belief in life being created by God inform his hesitation. Like there's a lot of stuff here that's here by implication, but it's help the non-Catholic or the non-Christian audience get what is going on in Kurt's mind, right?
Right. Yeah, so these Zoomers are like, lighten up. Yeah, what's your problem? Jeez, they're just completely they don't see exactly how twisted it is that you would just deliberately get yourself shot in the face just for the fun of resurrecting because hey, we all come back. It doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is something at stake when you say that when you get to the point where death no longer matters, when there is no more fear of death, what kind of a person do you become in that circumstance? And we see that as this issue continues, that lingering question: what kind of people are we becoming because we have essentially conquered death and no longer have that fear hanging over our head? What is that? What is that privileging in our society? What is that turning us into?
So he grabs the Magneto statue to take back to show Magneto.
And he grabs the yes. So he grabs the Magneto statue to take back to show Magneto. Yep. That's something of yours. All right, let's see if Comixology will actually let me get to that page. But yeah, so he brings back something to show Magneto from this so-called Museum of Hate.
Okay, Comixology Spiral of Death.
Yeah, I might have to exit the reader and come back to it. Sometimes that's what I have to do.
Is it faster if you do like the page style instead of the panel style?
It might be. I'll try that once I can get it back open.
Okay. Well, something I recollect after he shows Magneto the statue is Magneto gives an epic speech on the need for mutants to be unified, and then Magneto kind of like makes the point. Well, look, Kurt. Science and our technology have basically brought us to this point where we've ended death. You're still holding on to like these old religious fears of death that we have overcome. And I think he has the line, "You're so busy looking for serpents, you haven't noticed that we're in Eden," which is good because it's connecting it to Kurt's faith and it's making a really clear, memorable distinction between the Magneto perspective and Kurt or Nightcrawler's perspective.
Right. So there's the badass Magneto statue.
He even seems to think it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And then, so here we zoom in. I'm grateful. Those old missiles are a testament to folly. All those years we wasted, mutant vying with mutant, using the clumsy tools of the enemy to fight among ourselves. Magneto really was only meant as a lighthearted look around you, my friends. Look what we can do when we embrace our commonality. So Magneto is basically giving a speech that it's essentially we must act as a collective and not as individuals speech.
Yeah,
essentially.
and human beings are still the enemy. They're still like making sort of smart alecky comments about Homo sapiens as a people. Like, meanwhile, they're resurrecting mutant life, but only the ones they choose to, and they still all have a hang up over the bad, mean human beings.
Yeah. So we have defeated death. We have shaken the world. We have built an empire of enlightenment, and all within our first year. Yes, these pitiful old toys are a gift, an invitation to forsake the past and seize a brave new future to anyone who cares enough to take it seriously. And everyone's clapping, except for Kurt. Kurt follows him. What was that? I believe it's called a sermon. I rather thought that was your era. area. Come to think of it, didn't you tell Cyclops you wanted to found a mutant religion? I'm still thinking about that. A fool's errand in my view, but preferable to these juvenile stunts. Has it not occurred to you that juvenility may be appropriate in the land of the ever young, or that laughter may be the antidote to horror? So this is some good stuff, right? I mean, there is a confused aspect of this where the writer isn't really conversant enough to come at this from Kurt's actual Christian worldview, but there is evidence of effort and trying, which is again why I was so inclined when I first read this issue to give him a lot of benefit of doubt, basically.
Like, write a tweet that says, Catholic friends, if you were in this situation, what would you do? And then and then people will tell you, well, here's this church father, here's this friar and his perspective, right? Like the internet has basically given you an opportunity to try to figure out what another religious perspective or another political perspective might be if you need to write that kind of character.
Right.
I also don't know anything about this Crucible thing. The only thing I know about it, I was trying to like pick up by inference from this issue. But I'm guessing he was some super mutant that's let them end death through some kind of like pod growing process or something. I didn't quite get it.
Yeah. So now they're talking about the gladiatorial combat I was talking about earlier. Kurt says, it's murder, Eric. And Magneto says, the world's first post-mortal society, and you're worried about sinning against your dusty god. So, again, some really, really good stuff here. There's glimmers of good stuff in this. Let me see. Let's zoom into this one, if it'll let me. Come on. So this is the line you were talking about. As I recall, he was something of an authority on resurrection himself. You know your problem, Nightcrawler? You're so busy looking for snakes, you can't see Eden. Yeah, so that's the line you're talking about. Where, as far as a lot of these mutants are concerned, this is the utopia they've been looking for. And they just they can't understand why anyone would see a problem with it, right? Okay, so we have that scene, which had a lot of good stuff in it. And then Kurt meets this mutant who has found her way to Krakoa. She's new here. And because he's kind of lost in his own thoughts after his conversation with Magneto, he just kind of points her in the direction of, oh, well, this is where you go if you're new. And then he just kind of goes off and leaves her, right? And what ends up happening to... Oh, so we have this conversation with the scientist, too. That you'll probably want to talk about. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So he literally has like a hashtag science line where he's growing psychedelic mushrooms out of his brain. Like, it's so cheesy. Yeah. I was really like of two minds on it. Like on the one hand, it could be something where someone who's kind of cringy and hashtag sciencey could write that thinking it's actually cool. Or it could almost be someone who's trying to make a point that hashtag science isn't all that, would do this just as a way of making fun of this guy because he looks ridiculous. Yeah. He goes basically on like a long screed about how, well, we've seen all of these gods in the universe. You know, we fought with them, but we've never met your god, Kurt. It kind of like as a way of just challenging Kurt. So why do you still believe in this god? And an interesting thing for Kurt is, well, yeah, we've met Thor and we've beaten up all of these gods, but we've never met my god, right? So that's almost like a comforting thing. God, the God of the Christian Bible has never shown up to duke it out with the mutants and blow up the earth.
I'm not bewildered. So, Piffle, you've been fiddling with that superstitious dross like a violinist on the deck of the Titanic. So that's him holding his rosary.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, again, like so something we haven't been talking about too much is there are these weird, like pseudo-religious quotes that it's like the book of fluorescence or whatever, and it's like a bunch of brain
Yeah.
farts, right? So on the one hand, it's kind
Yeah.
of goofy and just musings. On the other hand, it's written like, oh, this is going to be a new scripture. This is going to be a new holy book, and it's just Kurt kind of wondering if he should start a religion, which is that
Yeah.
no like traditional Christian person of any denomination thinks, you know what I want to do? I want to start
Start a
a
new
brand new
religion. Yeah.
religion.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I like Christianity
Yeah.
so much, and Christianity's a religion. So why shouldn't I start my religion that'll be just whatever I want it to be? No.
Yeah. So yeah, that is a little bit bizarre. I will say that on one level, at least the writer is acknowledging that religion is a key organizing principle for society. That it is a very powerful way to organize a society, on the moral plane. At least that is being acknowledged, even if we don't really have a good idea of how a Catholic or any Christian would approach using religion as an organizing principle. So it's like this writer has like stepped up to the first level, but there's still other levels he needs to go to really understand how someone who has a faith tradition would actually respond in a situation like this.
Secular sociologists tend to talk about kind of like religion as a phenomenon that affects people.
Yeah.
Religious people
Yeah.
don't tend to talk about their religion as a social phenomenon. They talk about it as a personal reality.
Right. Right. So, I mean, really, you leotard wearing types of locked horns with more actual gods than I've endured suboptimal lattes. Why is it that the only one of whom we've seen no trace is the very one you continue to honor? Have you considered that maybe why I continue to honor him?
There we go, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not one that we've actually defeated, so maybe he's the real thing, So alien life, metaphysical entities, and the overthrow of mortality itself. What does a credulous little believer do when all the big questions have been answered? They find better questions. But what's interesting here is that declaring that all the big questions have been answered by science is actually not correct.
Right. So, and in this case, what's kind of neat is that curing death has created the question of, well, what are we going to do? Now, it hasn't fixed that question. It's actually just kind of like posed that question in a different way for in a different generation. Like if we ever get to the point where science makes android humans or something, that's not going to end the question of human value. That's going to force everyone to think about the implications of what human value means when we make robot people, right?
Right. And, as someone who is coming from the perspective of a faith tradition, what I would say is someone who is coming from the perspective of a faith tradition and also studied science. But that was my major in college was neuroscience. So, I had to learn evolutionary theory and so on as part of my major, right? So coming from that perspective, what I would say as a believer, and probably what should have been put in Kurt's mouth, is that the fact that science has come up with plausible theories for or plausible theories for why life looks and acts the way that it does not actually fundamentally answer the God question. There's a difference between the how something was done and why it was done. There's the way I've been taught in my faith tradition is that there's two levels of analysis essentially. There's the how, there's the mechanical, and then there is the teleological. Why
Purpose,
does
yeah.
this exist? Yeah. So what is its purpose? So yes, speaking as someone who has studied science, science has answered a lot of questions, but science is utterly incapable of answering the why question, the teleological question. What is the purpose of all of the things that are here?
This is
So,
another thing where, like, if you just kind of like let a, like, you don't need to be a Catholic expert to write a Catholic
yeah,
character, right? Like, one thing that
right.
any religious person might ask is, well, have you ever noticed how many evil scientists we fight? Even in the superhero universe, have you ever noticed how many of the people we
Yeah,
fought have been evil scientists,
yeah,
right? Where the point
right.
is,
Like
science
Doctor
doesn't
Doom, like
necessarily
Doctor
make us
Doom.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Doctor Doom, or some of the ones that Iron Man fought in the early days. So yeah, evil scientists are very common antagonists in comic books. Have you ever wondered why that is? Could it be that science does not tell us anything about morality or purpose or how it should be used? That science like capitalism or constitutional government are tools that are meant to be put into a context, that has a moral reality to it. Like, uh, speaking of capitalism, like I understand why there are people who are against capitalism, because capitalism, it's just a tool. It's not good or bad. It is a completely neutral tool that can be used for good or bad ends. What it is it's the best way to distribute all of the things and materials that we make and that are here. It's the best way to distribute resources in a way that is at least remotely equitable compared to all the other ways we could distribute those resources. But that doesn't mean that a capitalist cannot be an absolute pig of a human being, right? Because
Yeah.
capitalism doesn't give us a moral structure. It's just a tool for distributing resources in society that happens to be the best and most efficient way to do it, right? But it still has to exist in a moral framework, in which we have this tool called capitalism. Here is the best way in which we use that tool to accomplish the ends for society that we believe are the best ends, right?
Right.
So
Social
science,
theories are different than individual
yeah,
choices. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So science is kind of on that same plane as capitalism. Science is a tool to get at the truth about the physical world, but science is utterly incapable of telling us what ends we should use that truth for, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely a response that someone who is a believer could have said at that moment that probably Cy Spurrier is unaware of, right? Um, so yeah, so we have that, but it's still interesting that again, the reason why I got kind of excited about this comic is that at least it's bringing up the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just accepting the current status quo is a-okay. It is actually bringing up the question. Maybe there is something that is wrong with what's
I
going
think
on.
the editor needed to make the writer hone in on that question, right? Because we've had basically
Right.
like 3 subplots at this point.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So now we get to, here's the gladiatorial combat we were talking about. And we see that the person in the arena is the person that Kurt encountered a few pages back, right?
So what's implied is that she has come here because she wants to die and get resurrected, but she wanted someone compassionate to help her. She was hoping Kurt would help her. He was too busy, didn't pay attention to her. So now she's getting the gladiatorial ring, getting her butt kicked painfully because he wasn't paying attention.
Right.
So he feels guilty about that.
Right. Yeah. So because he was distracted after his conversation with Magneto, he did not address her request. So see here, she says, "I wanted you to do it. They said I could choose. They said you're one of the kindly ones. I wanted you to end this pain. Why did you send me away?" And the look in his face again is absolutely horrified that this is happening to this, to this particular mutant, right? So, and he bamfs in, right, and says, "Stop it. Yeah, this is senseless. She's not a fighter. All you're doing is hurting her." So, So Magneto says, "Yes, I see you, Sister Lost. Today you are lesser. Today you do not belong. But oh, you are a fighter, and tomorrow we shall meet as kin." And he kills her. So Kurt tried to intervene. "Nothing hurts more than a life of submission, Nightcrawler, as I dare say you know." So he's still holding the rosary here. So there's this ideology here that that you must never submit, that you should always be, you should always be in power, you should always be in charge, that there is nothing worthwhile in submitting to an authority of any kind. That believers would definitely say, no, actually, there is something worthwhile in submission to a higher authority, right? There is something worthwhile in laying down your desire to control every aspect of your life and basically let go and let God, essentially.
Right.
So yeah, so we can see those competing ideologies in play here, which again makes this issue very interesting. Well, golly, I think he cut you down worse than her. I expect you must feel extremely dejected. Perhaps I could interest you in an experimental toadstool, says Dr. Nemesis. It's not Magneto that bothers me, Air Doctor. It's the fact that everyone else thinks that this is perfectly fine, right?
Right, and then again, this is like connecting to gladiatorial sports. Yeah,
and it's and again, like that's the kind of stuff in this issue that is so good. Like if only Cy Spurrier had maybe done a little more research on his Twitter, like you said, just like put out a tweet. So, I've been hired to write this comic book in the X line with a character who is canonically a believer. How should I write him? People who believe, like even something like that might have helped to elevate this from good or good/interesting to, wow, this is actually potentially great, but it is like, I subscribe to this because even though I don't think Cy Spurrier really has the 100% understanding about how a believer would respond in this situation, again, the fact that in his writing he's willing to ask the question, he's willing to acknowledge that some people would have a problem with this, is at least the first step to actually getting a really great story out of this whole scenario that has been set up in this kind of Hickman X-Men universe, right?
Now, Hickman isn't writing this, but he's kind of like set up the basic pattern of the X books now.
Yeah.
Okay.
With all the data sheets, because
yeah,
I don't know. I think he must be an autist like me with all the data sheets and stuff. So, Arbor Magna the next morning. So there's Kurt. He's there where the people get resurrected out of those weird pods, right?
Yeah.
And he talks to Professor X. You know
One of
why
the
I'm
things that
here.
strikes Kurt is that the mutants seem to have a religious commitment to this resurrection process. It's almost like they're naturally developing their own religion unbidden, and
Right.
that's one of the things that's bugging him. But his
Right.
theory is,
Right.
well, what if maybe I could create a religion that would feed into this religious feeling they have for this resurrection process. That's where he's stuck, basically.
But right. So like his concern is there's kind of a native religion that is developing just naturally from the religious impulse that human people have. But the problem is that what this new religion that's kind of growing organically is centering itself on is potentially problematic. So how do you redirect that religious impulse into something that is actually pro-social and based in truth, essentially? So quite so, but then I suspect fictions will have currency in our brave new world, polite or otherwise. Let's see if we can't do something about all that guilt. Let's greet our new friend. So this is the one who wanted to be killed in a kindly way, being resurrected. Gravitational neutrality.
So the
Welcome
reason
back,
she was
child.
she was basically disfigured because she had a mutant power that made her, I guess, immune to gravity, which meant she developed this elongated figure. Then she lost her powers, which meant she basically can't move anymore. Now that she's resurrected, she gets her powers back and she can like move around freely again.
Yeah, and then it turns out that her powers makes everyone sick. Like, yeah, destabilization of the inner ear. Except for Kurt. Kurt's not puking his guts out.
Right, Kurt. I guess Kurt. That's his natural kind of like acrobatics there, helping him out.
Yeah, because he's an acrobat. He's worked out his inner ear quite a bit. So
this also establishes that it doesn't just bring you back; it brings you back as Cerebro remembered you. So that means that whatever gap there was between Cerebro and your death, it is lost. So again, they're being kind of cavalier about this, but maybe like what, a year, 2 year, 3 years of experiences just got erased.
Right. And also we have that Pixie is seeing something in the dark too, which is also kind of interesting. What is that thing that she's seeing? Here's Cheese Toasty. And then, actually, all I can think about right now is sushi because, Cerebro basically erased that her favorite thing was Cheese Toasty at the time because Cerebro can only bring you back. It's basically like a refresh from your last save point, essentially, in gamer speak. So, they come back as they were when Cerebro recorded them, Kurt, not as they were when they died. But they're the same people. But are they really? That's the question, right?
Ooh. Come on, panel. There we go.
Yeah. So, when did you last walk in your garden, Professor? There is wonder and hope, but also there is vice and violence and death. Cheap death. Again, very, very good. The acknowledging that in this context where you're effectively immortal, suddenly death has no meaning, and that actually might in fact be a bad thing, right?
Now, something here that's kind of interesting is I've always had to read on Professor X that he sacrifices a lot for the mutant cause, but he's actually kind of a dick in all of his interpersonal
Yeah.
relationships. It's kind of like Kurt's talked to Magneto, Kurt's talked to Doctor Nemesis, now Kurt talks to Professor X. I wouldn't have minded if they
Professor
just got
X,
down to
yeah.
maybe like heart to hearts with one or two important characters, right? Maybe to focus it a little bit more, because we don't get enough time to bring that out. But X basically says, well, I'm proud of what I've done for mutant kind, but I was a horrible father. And he asks Kurt to go investigate his son, who might be up to something.
Yeah. But I feel it's something terrible just out of sight, waiting for the cracks to appear, which probably has something to do with whatever it was that Pixie was seeing in the dark, right?
Yeah. His instincts are right, even if he can't articulate what the problem is yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had told nobody inspiration has been elusive. What on earth could be so bad that even Professor X must sweet talk a disciple? You could just snap your fingers. I detected something, a presence. It is extremely adept at hiding from me. So there is something here that is preying on their negative emotion, right? And now he's being charged with seeking that out. That there is an Omega-11 mutant somewhere that is preying on their negative emotion, right?
Okay.
This patchwork man that the Zoomers are talking about. So he goes to seek out information on this. And stop. Sorry, my computer is sending me notifications that are annoying. Okay. So there he is praying to Jesus. You were talking about, so we have him praying to Jesus, but we don't really know what to do with that.
Right. They know that they have to show him being devout, but I don't think the writer knows how that affects how Kurt would think and react in a situation like this, basically. With this stuff, I do appreciate that they are making the effort to have the point that Kurt is devout.
Right. Why me? You understand people in a way I never could. So X sends him on this mission because he understands people in a way that Professor X does not. And so we have that image again, presumably of the Patchwork Man. And once again, we have this theme. You're one of the kindly ones, right? More of the data sheets. And out here in the graveyard.
Now, I don't know who this character is, but apparently she's some sort of seer character. And so the question is, well, why are they only resurrecting fighters? Why aren't they resurrecting people who might give them more insight or knowledge of the world? Maybe there's something up with that.
Yeah, so someone's talking to Kurt. I noticed there are no rush to resurrect folks like her on your creepy wee island. Bit suspicious that, don't you think? No seers to see. Yeah. So again, there's that suggestion that like what's being prioritized in the queue is hiding something that is dark and sinister underneath the surface of this new society.
And it's, I think the big reveal is that it's Legion, who is Professor X's kind of like mentally unstable son, but also has fairly powerful mutant powers.
Right. That's why he sent you, I suppose. Dad was never one for empathizing, not when he had all you lickspittles to do it for him. I'm sorry, Kurt, you don't deserve to get caught up in this. It's true what they say about you. You are one of the kindly ones, but you're far too late. the bastards are already inheriting the Earth. Yeah. So so there's Legion, his mentally unstable son, and but the other reveal, the bastards are inheriting the Earth. The fact that there's the suggestion that we are deliberately prioritizing those who are the fighter types or the bastard types, and we're pushing back in the queue the ones who don't have those qualities. So we're, like I said, we're setting up this sort of natural selection scenario where we're favoring people of a particular militant caste, and those that are more peaceful and more gentle, like Kurt, are basically not privileged in the society. They
one
are,
interesting thing about this is the X-Men. Well, the mutants now have like this very strong collective identity society that they're building, but there are unanswered questions about who runs the strings and who gets to be at the front, who gets to cut to the front of the line. So there's kind of this interesting thing where like the oppressed minority is potentially building like a powerful, unquestionable utopia for themselves. So that'd be interesting to see fleshed out too.
Right. So it addresses like the complaints that people I've listened to, people that I follow have had about this kind of new mutant status quo is that they're besides being out of character in many cases, they are also they're presenting this kind of supremacist collectivist idea as if it's a good thing, right? So this is the first book I've seen that actually says, no, wait, maybe it's not, right? So so that then opens up the possibility that maybe there is something more here than meets the eye. Maybe we are supposed to interpret this kind of supremacist collectivist ideology that the mutants seem to be adopting as, no, this is actually them going down the wrong track, and they just don't realize it because they're being impacted somehow by what Krakoa is doing to them, right? It kind of gives more credence to the theory that no, these are not actually the mutants we know. They are being, ensorcelled in some way by this island, which is good. It gives people who like, the old Claremont X-Men kind of hope that maybe there's a point to all of this that has been going on for the past several years, right? So Warzard says, let me see if I can add this. Yeah, going with Marvel segregation, maybe Marvel should let Christians write Christians. Oh, I lost. Okay, Marm, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we lost you for a second there. All right.
There we go. Warzard's right. We've got Asians writing Asians. We've got.
Yeah, like Zach says, we got the blacks write the blacks, and the gays write the gays, and the Asians write the Asians. Yes, have the Christians write the Christians. That would be interesting.
There are some interesting themes. I guess my closing thought on this book is there are some interesting themes, but it needs more focus. We need less distracting subplots, and we need Kurt to act like a Catholic, not like a New Age hippie.
Yes. But yeah, even with the flaws, even with Kurt acting like a New Age hippie instead of a Catholic, it was interesting enough that I decided to subscribe to it because maybe we can finally address the elephant that's been sitting in the room for the past several years. Okay. Now it is time to move on to the back end of our program, which is the Iron Man section of our stream. And we're going to start, first of all, with new Hellcat, new Iron Man number 8. if Comixology can pull it up for us. Yeah, so I jokingly said new Hellcat number 8 because that's what this is. Tony does not appear in this book at all. It is, in fact, all Patsy Walker show. It's even indicated in the title here, America's #1 teenager. So the entire point of this book is to focus on Patsy Walker and not on Tony at all. Because if you recall from our last stream, Tony got completely yeeted out of the story. He's somewhere in space, in some location unknown. And it seems that my fears were basically warranted, that was Cantwell's way to get Tony out of the way so he could focus on the character he really wants to write about, which is Hellcat. To which I say, if you wanted to do that, then you should have just pitched a Hellcat book and left my Tony alone. Okay, so #1 Marmaduke fan, what are some of your thoughts on this issue?
Artistically, it looks like the art changed mid-issue, so I think that they switched artists, like when they did like the high school flashback, and then the high school scenes have a lot of weird perspective issues that I think come from using a 3D program like Google SketchUp. So I've praised the art in previous issues. I can't praise the art on this one as much.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of what if you're going to build the secondary character, right? Because it would make sense, like if Patsy Walker is like the second, is Iron Man's wingman for this story, give her a little moment where we build her character. But it feels like it's some sort of weird fourth wall break thing where they're talking about how she started out as a romantic comedy comic book character. Like, who is nerdy enough? Yeah, well, who is nerdy enough to know about Patsy Walker, to kind of like know about the stuff that they're referencing? And if we don't know about the stuff they're referencing, like, how am I supposed to feel a connection to this girl? I guess her boyfriend became like the Demon King of Hell or something.
Yeah.
It was, in addition to kind of hilariously sidelining Tony, it's not even like that clear what they want to do with Patsy.
Right. And as I intimated in the pre-show, what I wanted to say as far as the absence of Tony is concerned is it has happened before in his canon, but when it happened, it was back during his second drinking arc, where he was basically a homeless drunk living out on the streets, and Rhodey was Iron Man. And even in that case, and even in that storyline, it was really only like 1 or 2 issues in which Tony did not appear, but Rhodey did. And like you were saying, in that case, it was fine because #1, there was an ongoing story that established a very serious reason why Tony was not here. #2, the replacement character who became the central focus character was a character who had been established for, years and years ahead of time as basically Tony's wingman, as you were saying. So the fact that the issue featured Rhodey and did not feature Tony, again, you don't mind it in that instance because that character is definitely very firmly established as one of Tony's best friends. So it's okay. It's okay in that case to have the 1 or 2 issues where it's just Rhodey and Tony's not there. So that's the difference. Like, in the case of the second drinking arc, and even when Rhodey was being Iron Man, again, the majority of the issues, Denny O'Neil would say, "Oh, by the way, here's what's going on with Tony right now." And it would just be a couple of pages of Tony, in a homeless shelter, or Tony being in a hospital because he was forced to sleep it off or something like that. So there'd be like these little check-ins. Yes, Tony is still here. Yes, he's still drinking, but but here we don't even get a check-in. I was like, if you could at least just give us a check-in, what's happening with Tony while we're doing the side quest with Patsy here. That would be nice if you could do that, please. Because this is actually Iron Man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as you were saying, when they get to the high school flashback, there is the switch in the artist style. Yeah. Did you want to say anything in particular about the flaws in the new artist?
Patsy takes a history test, and Patsy gets sent to the principal's office, and it's extremely dramatically presented, like dun dun dun. She has to go to the principal's office, and I was just thinking, what are they gonna smack her with a ruler? Where is this going?
Yeah. I mean, the point of this is to allow her to access essentially her telepathic abilities, right?
Psychic ability. Yeah,
it's not
that's kind of a clever idea. Yeah. Okay. Do you understand what the heck was
where the answers are?
What was going on with the mom drawing a comic strip about her? Like, was that like a meta thing where they were referencing like the people who made the Patsy Walker comic, or is that something I just didn't get? That if that's supposed to be like an in-universe thing or a fourth wall break thing?
No, that is an in-universe thing. That in fact, she became famous for being famous because her mom drew comics about her. I believe that's in-universe. So
okay.
Yeah, it's like comics about her were sold in universe. So, yeah, were there any particular panels that you wanted to highlight in terms of the art style? Because again, I'm the art philistine here. You're the one that really has more of the expertise.
Maybe like these two where they're like sitting in the room. It's a copied art panel, right? Which always leads to kind of like unintentional hilarity because they're just frozen. And it's like the apple is giant. When you use Google SketchUp, you basically just like plop it down onto the page and then trace over it. But that doesn't necessarily mean you know how to fit the characters into it, right? So you'll end up with these results where you line up a character and you'll say, oh, well, they're 8 feet tall and their locker is 3 feet tall, right? So my preference is always to draw a person like in a room and then add the details onto that. Like I don't have to worry about going and finding a high school. I'll go find a room, I'll photo. I don't know if people know this, but I frequently am dancing around in my basement in my underwear to get reference photos. But so basically, if you're an artist, do that, and then you can add the details as you need, and you don't have to worry about plopping a photo onto a photo of a room, and the two don't fit.
Yeah. Warzard says editor's notes would help. Yes,
definitely.
In this case, definitely editor's notes that kind of led the reader to here's what this is referencing would be extraordinarily helpful in this case. And it's a mystery why they were not included.
It just occurred to me the only reason I know about Patsy Walker being from Romantic Comics is because I was reading old comics with Hellcat in them and figured it out that way. If you did not know that, this issue would make zero sense to you about what was going on.
Right. So like I was able to get it because again, I've encountered Patsy Walker in other comics I've read. So I picked it up. I picked up that this was how she started as well. But if you're someone who's a new reader, right, it would be helpful to say, oh, what this is referencing is, this era Patsy Walker. Check it out. And it'd be a great way to sell an old book, So it is kind of odd that they did not do that. Okay. Anything else you would like to focus on in this issue?
It has the greatest final two panels I've ever read, because after this strange mystical experience where she relives high school
Yeah.
and comes to terms with her feelings so she can bury her trauma and fight the bad guy, she just wakes up and says,
Right.
wait a minute, where the hell is Tony?
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. Yeah, right here. Wait a minute. Where the hell is Tony? Yeah. Which, yeah, you tweeted. This is a great meta comment on the fact that Tony does not appear in this issue. This issue of Iron Man, which is supposed to star Tony Stark. Like, what? I mean,
Hellcat's becoming She-Hulk. She's aware of what the readers are thinking.
Yeah. It's like even when Bendis was trying to replace Tony with Riri Williams, Tony was still there as an AI. Like, even in that case, you still had Tony in the Iron Man book. So, yeah. Where the hell is Tony? That was basically my entire reaction to this issue, is where the hell is Tony? Unless you're in an ongoing story where there's a very, very, very good reason why Tony is not there, aka the second drinking arc back in the 80s, you really gotta, even just one page, just a one-page check-in, here's where Tony is. Like, it would be great, because it is, in fact, an Iron Man book. He's supposed to be the star. He's not supposed to be a supporting character in his own book. So, any final thoughts from you?
It's starting to lose me. Like, I was always thinking, well, okay, there's this cool thing going where they're going to go fight the bad guy, and it's getting pushed further and further into the background as we're just doing weird stuff that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the original story. Shooter always said every comic is someone's first. Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. So, imagine let's imagine someone who maybe liked Iron Man in the MCU and decides to one day that, let me pick up this Iron Man comic, and opens it, and it's all about Patsy Walker and Tony Stark is not anywhere. What's that reader going to do? He's going to put that book back down, or he or she is going to put that book back down and walk out of the store and be like, well, that wasn't about Iron Man. I'm not interested in the Iron Man comics because they're not about this character that I really like, right? Yeah.
It's also an example of comic nerdiness. We can't let comic nerdiness be a requirement for reading comics. And this was a very comic nerdy issue.
Right. And it's okay to have, you have to strike a balance between acknowledging continuity and letting continuity matter, but also recognizing that there's going to be newbies who will pick this up, and they might be totally lost if you don't also give them some guide points to help them understand what's going on. So, the old comics, they always kind of gave you like a recap in story. Like, they'll have and maybe that's a little bit too far in the other direction, but it does in fact help a new reader who's coming in maybe mid-story. Oh, well, at least I'm caught up with what happened in the last issue, so I can understand what's going on here.
Right.
So how to strike that balance, honestly, I don't know, but I think that there does need to be a balance struck between just throwing you into the deep end without any sort of editorial guide points whatsoever, and the sort of things that you would see in the old comics where the recaps would take up a couple pages of real estate in the pages that are supposed to be your story for this issue. That might be taking things maybe a little too far in this day and age, but still, you need to have something to guide that new reader into what you're doing.
We can't even, they're not even pretending that it's something like, oh no, Tony is dead or anything like that. Like, we know, oh yeah, Tony's coming back, but they revealed enough to show that Tony's alive last issue, so we don't even have the excuse of oh no, is he really dead, as a way of explaining his absence.
Yeah. What happened to him? What? He just got zapped away in a bolt of lightning. Is he alive? Is he dead? Actually, someone should be asking the question because what they saw was basically a bolt of lightning carrying him away. So, did he get vaporized or is he somewhere else? I don't think they actually know in universe what happened to him.
And now
we, as the reader, do.
It's now it's the moment we've all been waiting for. Tales of Suspense. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I ate my vegetables and I did my homework, and now I get to read a comic book.
Now we get to the Silver Age silliness that we all enjoy. Okay, so we are doing we're picking up where we left off in the last stream with issues 61 and 62. The death of Tony Stark.
Story by Stan Lee, art by Don Heck, and inking by Dick Ayers. And Tony just can't catch a break during this issue.
Yes. Because
so maybe like to recap for people. So Tony can't take his armor off without his heart stopping, which means he's in this situation where he's walking around in his Iron Man armor and everyone wants to know where Tony is. And it's getting to the point that all of them are suspecting Iron Man of foul play or kidnapping Tony Stark.
Right.
He's trying to come up with some like temporary excuses, and Pepper and Happy just aren't having it. And so the police and the press are starting to get involved.
Yeah. So now we have Pepper and Happy quitting. So
also
Tony
like a nice
missing for over a month
right?
now.
If you didn't know about the previous issue, like that would be a nice opening hook. What? Pepper and Happy are quitting? Why? It's a great, great like it is continuing a story, but it also has its own beginning, middle, and end story beat to it.
Yeah. And this is actually sometimes the recaps are clunky, but this is actually a fairly elegant way to do a recap. Tony Stark's been missing for over a month now. You've been using his office and acting like you own the place, but you're not fooling us. So that does kind of fill in a brand new reader on, Tony Stark is missing and they're suspicious of Iron Man because of it, right? That's actually fairly elegant as recaps go in these early comics. Even though we can't prove it, we know you had something to do with his disappearance, and we're going to find proof, but we can't do it unless we quit our jobs. It's no use. Now there's no one left, no one I can turn to. And now the police are getting involved too. I'm Inspector Flint, right? So, as you say, Tony can't catch a break. He's trapped in his armor. He can't reassure people that he is in fact alive, and Iron Man has not done something nefarious to him. And his friends, who are super loyal, are actually, ironically, making his life more difficult. Which makes
like
the story
last couple of issues we've talked, there are a couple twists and turns in this issue. But most of it relates to like a central point, right? So in the Way of X book, there was this overarching theme of Kurt not being down with resurrection, but it was kind of like he was getting tugged and pulled in different directions. Oh, let's go over here and look at the gladiatorial fights. Let's go over here and look at the cult. For Tony, like the twists and turns all kind of relate to Tony. Like he gets the bright idea of just taking off his helmet and hanging out in bed, but then everybody wants to come and see him, and he can't stay tucked up in bed forever. Just when it looks like that's gonna work out for him, Mandarin blows up his house. And that's what starts the Mandarin.
So we have so how surprised the world would be if they knew the real answer for when Iron Man takes his helmet off. Tony Stark appears. So he's in his lab trying to figure out a way to take his armor off. So this recaps why he's not there. I can never admit my true identity if my
he's working so hard.
Yeah. Yep. I can't allow the Avengers to get mixed up in my own problem. Sometimes I think it might be best if Tony Stark were gone forever, and Iron Man as well. That's Tony being a drama queen. I love drama queen Tony. Like that's one of the things I enjoy about the early comics is just how dramatic Tony is. He has this kind of quality of everything in my life is going to hell. Maybe it would be best if I just didn't exist anymore. Like Pepper, Happy loves Pepper, but Pepper's really into me. What do? Well, I'm going to try to convince Pepper to be with Happy because I can never ask any woman to love me when I'm always on the brink of death. Like that kind of melodrama is something I really enjoy about these early issues. And I could never have romance. I should just throw myself in the ocean. Like, he doesn't actually say that, but that's essentially like the style here. It is sort of Stan Lee channeling his days as a romance comic writer,
Right.
Yeah. Which I think that contributes to why there in my first omnibus there's a letter from Stan Lee in which he observes that when Iron Man was created, and in the early years of Iron Man, what he noticed is that Iron Man was the character that got the most fan mail from female readers. And he was, and this whole letter was like trying to figure. His letter was like him, like musing on why that might be. And I think what I was just talking about, the sort of romance novel style melodrama of these early comics, I think might have contributed to that. To what actually attracted female readers, and I've also commented in my own videos, like, because one of the things that Stan Lee speculated is that, well, or maybe it's because of his weak heart that kind of causes women to want to be with him so that they can minister to his needs, and that was one of his speculations. And I said, yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, that's kind of part of it. Yeah. I mean, I've also spoken on many occasions that the weak heart aspect is something that I connect to as someone who has chronic illness. That it is like a very subtle and very elegant metaphor for that, that I really appreciate. But as far as he's this, it is kind of we're kind of hitting on an archetype of, on the outside, he's just so strong and so dashing and debonair, but he has the secret vulnerable side. And I think that is something that a lot of women are naturally going to gravitate to,
Right. And then from his perspective, he also feels a little bit trapped by the armor, or by the expectations of heroism, and literally by the armor, figuratively by the virtue. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But the next day, outside the private estate of multimillionaire Stark, we see. So this is Happy. Happy is sneaking around Tony's private home. And Tony's in there. Oh no, he's coming. I gotta figure out some way to hide myself, right? Because I'm stuck in my armor. And so he runs to the bed, right? I reach the bed just in time, so long as I stay under the covers and look to my armor. Yeah. So of course it's me, Big Lug. Didn't Iron Man tell you not to worry about me? But we didn't believe him. We thought, next time, don't think. I told you Iron Man can be trusted. Mr. Stark's alive. He's home in bed. He's got some kind of sickness, but he's alive. So for a brief time, he's able to figure out a way to kind of get the docs off him, right?
But it doesn't quite work out the way he wanted it.
Yeah. So the doctor said I was run down. I needed absolute rest and quiet. I didn't want to worry anyone, so I told Iron Man to say I had taken a trip. Meanwhile, yeah, this is terrible. I dare not throw off the covers and stand revealed as Iron Man, but I can't remain in bed for the rest of my life. So even though it's that this seems like it would allay suspicion, it's still not the ideal solution. And here's the paparazzi showing up. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now instantly they start suspecting, well, what if Iron Man is keeping him a prisoner in his own home? He can't catch a break.
Yeah. Oh no. Iron Man might have forced him to say what he did to us. He could have been hiding behind Mr. Stark. Yeah. So it seems like, oh, maybe he can escape this situation, but nope, they're still suspicious. They've all gone. I can change back to Iron Man again. But then, because Tony can't catch a break, the Mandarin decides to blow up his house. Swift laser beam. So we have this laser beam.
And classic, just the villain having a speech about the blood of Genghis Khan flows in me. I am the Mandarin.
Yeah. Yes, in classic Silver Age silliness style. And there it is. His house has been blown up. And Pepper hears Tony Stark's home has just been struck by a mysterious deadly ray of unknown origin. Have we just found him only to lose him again? Oh no, everything
I like the
was
running
totally
gag
different.
that Happy Hogan is always very somber.
Yeah. The irony of his name, yeah. And in the castle of the Mandarin, when the witless American press broadcast that Stark was safe in his home, they didn't dream it gave me the information I needed to destroy him. Next, I shall devise a way to destroy Iron Man, and then I shall have rid myself of my two greatest enemies. Maybe he wasn't in his room. It's no use pretending he couldn't leave his bed. He was there. He was. So now they think he's dead.
And they blame Iron Man.
And they blame Iron Man because Iron Man's supposed to be Tony Stark's bodyguard. Where the hell were you? Meanwhile, Tony's inside going, I'm right here. Yeah. It's these kind of comics are a masterclass in irony. Like when I try to explain to my students what irony actually is, like these are good examples to use. This is irony. Right. You, as a reader, know that he is inside the armor, but in panel, in the story, the characters have no idea. Like, Mr. Stark had sent me to the other wing to get him some papers when the ray struck. There was nothing I could do. Yeah, lame excuses. I've seen Iron Man in action. You wouldn't believe how strong he is, the fantastic things he can do. With all his power, his armor, his secret scientific devices, why couldn't he have caused the deadly ray to hit Tony Stark? Yeah, but the police say the case is closed. Now Washington is investigating it. Meanwhile, Happy is like, the boss is dead. But Happy has this moment to think, oh, well, now I don't have to compete with Tony for Pepper's affection. According to Mr. Stark's,
Tony's his best friend, so he still has to mourn for him.
Yeah, so I'll be with Pep without Mr. Stark cutting in. So I've got nothing to worry about. Everything's great, sob. Yeah. So he's like, he's my best friend. I mean, it's like he's saying I should be happy because now my competition is gone, but I'm not because he's my best friend, right?
Right.
Meanwhile, Tony, I got to figure out where that ray came from. Where did that come from that destroyed my house? Woohoo! Oh yes, and we have him, being the genius by computing the rate of impact, probable trajectory, and other factors. I've narrowed the answer to a small area in the Orient. So, here's Tony being the smart guy. I'm using math to calculate where that probably came from, right?
But the Mandarin, being an evil genius, knew that Tony would catch up to him. Iron Man would catch up to him sooner or later.
Right. And that's the whole point. He wants to draw Iron Man there. Yeah. This is the spot. It could only be the Mandarin. So he knows he's going after the Mandarin here. Sooner or later, Iron Man will realize that mine was the hand that guided the death ray which killed Stark. Then surely as night follows day, he will attempt to attack me. And then we have Tony getting on a plane. I hope nobody hears the clanking of my armor.
And he has to sit in a plane in a hot trench coat and he can't take it off.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's basically doing this to conserve power because there's issues with his power packs. So and he basically acts like a madman so he can jump out of the plane, right? Just as I expected, he comes. Yeah. His castle is below. He probably knows I'm here, but that won't stop me. Everything has now been set in motion. There is nothing more for me to do but sit back and enjoy Iron Man's humiliating and total defeat. A beam shot out from the castle. I'm caught in its overwhelming brilliance. It's pulling me towards the rocks below. The Mandarin must expect the fall to finish me. So the armor helps him to survive, but then he's like, I don't get it. I survived the impact. My armor shielded me. I feel fine. So why do I seem to see spots before my eyes? Because that's another weapon.
He's subtly being hypnotized.
Yeah. He does not suspect their hypnotic effect. Soon they will sap his will, make him feel too weak to fight. But first, the time has come. Attack Iron Man. So we have this giant robot. So
I am Koto.
We're reading a comic book. Yeah, we are reading a comic book. Yay!
I even like that he has like a giant monk outfit. Like that's kind of cool.
But we have like death rays and tractor beams and hypnotic rays and giant robots. This is a comic book. Woohoo! Now that you introduced yourself, let's get to know each other better. So we have this fight with the robot. He's not a robot. He's alive. That's bigger and stronger than Giant Man. It worked, just as I knew it would. Under subtle hypnosis, he believed you to be a real living being. This sudden shock affected his nervous system, causing him to lose his will to fight. Tie the vanquished one to the wheel. So he gets tied up to a wheel. Like, this is awesome.
We even have the villain wanting him to wake up so I can tell you my backstory before I kill you.
Yeah. Awake, Iron Man. Observe how completely helpless you are. Your fate is in my hands. At the touch of a button, I can spin you around until the breath leaves your body. But you have beaten me each time we fought in the past, and so I wish to enjoy my victory. Hence, I shall allow you to live a few moments longer while I tell you my story. Yes. Yes. So, it's the classic, Ha! Now that I have captured you, now I will monologue. Like in classic Silver Age silliness style. And that's how 61 ends, with him tied to the wheel here.
And then by popular demand, we get an origin story for Mandy.
Yes. So here's the origin story of Mandy. The longer I can keep him talking, the more chance I have of finding a way to turn the tables on him. You cannot escape the concentrated titanium bonds that hold you fast. So before you meet your fate, I shall tell you what no human ears have ever heard. I shall tell you how I obtained my invincible power. Yes, and then we get into the story. My father was a direct descendant of Genghis Khan.
That's how you know he's a bad guy, because Genghis Khan was a famous historical bad guy.
Yeah. So for when I was born, an idol fell upon my father, killing him instantly. While my mother died of a broken heart upon hearing the news, so he was orphaned the moment he was born. And thus the gods were
raised
appeased.
him to hate the world, and she hated the world.
Yeah. Tragedy has shadowed the birth of this child. It is an omen. It is an evil omen. Never has an idol toppled before. But my family had been the wealthiest in China. My father's sister hated me. Our treasures would have been hers if not for me. Accursed child, if you had not lived, I would be the richest in all this land. But perhaps I may still be. If I were to wrap you and take you to another village, none would ever find you again. You would be brought up as a peasant. But then the gods again interrupt the plans. The fates themselves protect him. Alas, they are sinister, powerful fates. I shall never leave his side. I shall teach him to hate the world as I hate it. For I have been cheated of my fortune, of love, of everything I have ever desired. Yes, so this aunt raises him to hate the world as she hates it. Because she was denied the fortune by his very existence. Yeah. And then it goes into he was taught the sciences of the world, the arts of warfare, and the subtle crafts of villainy. But then one day my wealth is gone. You must leave your palace and this land. They belong to the government, for you have not paid your taxes. So the interesting thing about the Mandarin is he's in China, but he really hates the Chinese government. Because
there's
they
kind of
drove
like this
him out
neat
of
thing
his
where
home.
he represents sort of old China, and the communists represent,
Yeah.
the new socialist China.
New China.
So he wants to play them all against each other.
Yeah, yeah.
I think even Mao Tse-tung gets a reference at some point.
Yeah. Yes, I walk proud, for I was the Mandarin. The blood of the Khans flowed in my veins. The world would one day be mine. If you would eat, you must work as we do. Fool, you speak to the Mandarin. He would rather starve. I had a destiny to fulfill, right? The Mandarin feels nothing. Fears nothing. And eventually, he finds this spaceship. And inside the spaceship are the rings that give him his power, basically. So
oh yeah, I even like the connection that the alien started the legends of dragons in Chinese mythology, right? So it's even while doing like weird sci-fi stuff, they still try to like connect it to the kind of like ancient cultural history they're also drawing from. It's ancient and it's new.
Right. It's ancient and it's new. Yep. These are what I seek. So these are the rings, right? So I spent months, years outfitting the deserted castle which stood within the Valley of Spirits. Every treasure of the spaceship soon found a place within the gray stone walls. No man will interfere with me, for this valley is dreaded and shunned. And he studied this. He studied these new powers that he had until he mastered them. Each ring has a separate power. And it allows him to take over his little corner of the world here. And now I am ready to embark upon my plan of world conquest. Tony Stark was already slain. See Suspense 61. And you, my most powerful foe, shall likewise meet his fate. He's even more dangerous, more powerful than I dreamed. My life means nothing, but he must not be allowed to use his unearthly rings against mankind. I love that my life means nothing. That's also a very classic early Tony Stark line.
Yeah.
One of the first ones we did, where with the fake Doctor Strange, where Doctor Strange is like, no, you can't turn off all my electrical devices because that will impact you as well. And he's like, oh, well, gotta go sometime.
Yeah.
Hit the switch. Like, it's like, every hero, every heroic character has that capacity for self-sacrifice. But Tony Stark as a character does it gratuitously. Like, in his canon, like, it's not... when he gets pushed to the wall, he sacrifices himself. He just routinely does it, like it's one of his signature moves instead of something that you do in a desperate situation, right?
Right.
So my life means nothing. Very, very classic, Tony. So we have Tony on the wheel. If there was only some way I could recharge my transistors. And now we're going to turn on the wheel. Anthony, old boy, time to think fast. And now that you are disposed of, I shall meet with the Red Chinese. I have offered to give them a missile to be test fired. They do not know I have set it to reach Formosa. When it explodes there, it is sure to trigger World War III. So Mandarin is eager to trigger World War III. And after both the democracy and the communists have exhausted themselves, I should step in and rule the earth. So he basically wants to play both sides against the middle so that in the rubble he can arise triumphant.
I don't remember. What was Tony's trick for getting out?
Huh?
What was Tony's trick for getting out? I forgot that part.
Oh, it turns out that spinning the wheel actually recharges his transistors, so he's able to generate the power to snap his bonds, essentially. Yeah. So as we can see here, he's able to snap the wheel so that he can escape. I destroyed the wheel, smashed through the castle wall, and proved to myself that my galvanized armor is still the greatest body shield ever designed. Yeah, basically spinning the wheel actually, instead of, knocking him unconscious from the G-forces, actually helps him recharge so that he has enough strength to actually break his bonds and break the wheel, essentially. Go. Yeah, so I don't have time to wait for applause. I've got to find the Mandarin and stop his missile from reaching Formosa. We have to find him first. There, that did it. Now all I've got to do is follow the soundings of each blip, which are automatically recorded and analyzed by my miniaturized printed circuit computer system. Boy, I'm beginning to sound like some corny mad scientist in a grade B movie.
I love how Stanley pokes fun at himself. He's having fun telling this story, but when he knows he's getting a little nerdy, he kind of has the character say, boy, I'm starting to talk like a nerd.
Yeah. And that's something that I've said before too, is in the Stan Lee comics, the kind of self-awareness that Stan Lee has, and how meta he gets sometimes. Like the classic, we have a couple of panels where we're focusing on the love triangle between Tony, Happy, and Pepper, oh, well, let's get back to the superhero action before you think you're reading a romance mag by mistake. Like, and that'll be literally in the captions. So, and there is something kind of charming about that. The fact that he's well aware when he's getting too silly. And so he decides to like he hangs a lampshade on it, basically, you know, and says, yeah, this is silly. I'm aware of it. I'm still having fun. Like, yeah, that's one of the hazards of being a lone wolf type of adventure. After a while, you begin to talk to yourself. Well, talking time's over. There's the missile, and here I go. Now let's get back to the action. Let's stop this missile. Oh yeah, there's Mao. There's Mao. There's the mention of Mao you were talking about. If its performance pleases you, I can supply many more. Fool, the Red Chinese too shall grovel at my feet. So the rocket takes off.
And he leaves. I love how. Well, why is he leaving? Well, he's just so sure his missile will work. The Mandarin is such a master. We're not even suspicious of why he's leaving.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Tony jumps on a missile in classic Silver Age style. And now he's going to attempt to reroute it, essentially. Run for your lives. You've been betrayed. The Mandarin is a traitor because he rerouted it back to the source point. I
like the detail that Tony saves the day by still blowing up some of the Chinese communists and pinning it on the Mandarin. Just a nice little ironic twist.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a little old Iron Maker. Me, Iron Man. You just said the magic words. I don't know how you escaped my will, but I'll make you wish you hadn't. My flame ring will melt you into molten nothingness. Hot chance. Chin whiskers. It's got to hit me first. And with my transistors working again, I'm not exactly a sitting duck. So we get the classic, why did that baller drop in front of me? Oh, it was me, Iron Man! And again, classic melodramatic Silver Age style.
I also like the detail that he slaps it on a magnet, right? And the narrator explains it so you know how it's attached. Like just little, he has magnets on his wrist. That's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll go with that. And so we have this confrontation. He throws poison gas at him, but nope, I've got built-in oxygen filters. It's got everything but bucket seats. That really dates it. Okay. Looks like he's getting set to hit me with another ring. Maybe this time I can stop him in time. Maybe this can stop him in time. So he picks up a big boulder. He gets blinded. But blind or not, I can still toss this oversized BB in the direction you had been in. And it disintegrates. I've got my own troubles.
It's a tense fight. Like Tony's barely getting out here.
Yeah, so it's a good fight because they're very clearly evenly matched at the very least, right? So it's not a fight that he's winning easily, which makes it interesting to read. And then the Chinese. There, we have found the traitor. Oh, this is what you shared online. Fire! Let him feel the wrath of the People's Republic. Baku! So now the Chinese are firing at the Mandarin because they think the Mandarin's the traitor. Hey, look who's arriving in time. I'm saved by your own buddy boy. So, like, Iron Man doesn't even win. He just gets the Chinese intervene in the nick of time, essentially. So, again, that makes it it doesn't settle the question of who would actually win, because there's another element that comes in to play. So and again,
It preserves
again
Mandarin as a serious threat.
Yeah, exactly. It basically keeps him as this is a villain that really could do Tony in if it weren't for those meddling Chinese, basically. Yeah, and it preserves him for another day, essentially. I must return to the safety of my castle before I am seized. He's gone. Too much of a head start for me to follow. I better cut out too while I still can. Oh, and this is kind of cute too. Again, to basically conserve his power, he hops onto a military airplane here, and he's basically asleep in the back.
and the pilots get a kick out of it. Just like a little human element to it.
Yeah, it's a little human moment there for Iron Man. They'll never believe it. And miles away in a lonely castle in the heart of far-off China, one of the world's most dangerous mortals sits and broods. I shall never rest until Iron Man is destroyed. I have never failed before. I shall not fail next time. But for now, wait to see the thrills and surprises awaiting the Golden Avenger when he returns home. See you next-ish. All right, so those are Tales of Suspense issues. Bada bing. All right,
we actually got some comics with Iron Man in them. Yay!
Yay! And they were actually comics.
All right, so I guess next time we continue. I guess next time will be more new Iron Man Tales of Suspense.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
There's something.
I don't know anything about the Shang-Chi movie.
To be honest with you, I'm kind of not interested in the MCU anymore, because all of my favorite characters have basically been written out of the story. So, how do I feel about it? I don't feel anything, because I'm just not engaged with that aspect of the Marvel Universe at this point. So that's my thoughts on the matter. Yes, I do like Warzord says, I like the Mandarin as a villain. Yes, I do as well. Okay, he says the Mandarin is going to be the bad guy in Shang-Chi. Yes, but I understand that they are not intending to make him comic compliant. So, once again, for those of us who like the Mandarin of the comics, that's not really much of a selling point. So, yeah, and I have said, I think, in a tweet recently, that what's the point of having a Mandarin, whether he's comic compliant or not, if there's no Tony anymore? Like, it's kind of like, I'm skeptical of where a Rhodey-centered Armor Wars is going to go, because what's the point of having an Armor Wars if there's no Tony? So, yeah, I'm just not. I'm not, unless somebody I trust comes along and says, no, actually you should hook back into the MCU because of XYZ. I'm just not engaged in the MCU anymore. They either killed off or just essentially wrote out all the characters I had any investment in. So why? Why be engaged?
Right.
Yeah.
They've had TV shows where it's going and just going every which way.
Yeah. There was, like, I felt like Endgame was a really great ending, and now they're just kind of like, they're trying to milk it for all it's worth, but you had your ending. It should have just ended. Like, that. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the situation. So, any final thoughts before we start?
Did you watch any of the TV shows at all, or have you just not checked out of that?
Any of the TV shows? No, I have not watched any of the TV shows, because once again, I am checked out of that. I might just to cover it on my blog if I need a topic for a blog post one week. But yeah, I'm just, like I said, I'm just checked out at this point. They wrote out all the ones that I really liked. So, but Yeah. Anyway, so any final thoughts before we sign off for the evening?
Fun little batch of comics. I liked how the two Mandarin issues were both self-contained, but like it was a part one and a part two, but it was sort of like both of them had their own thing. Part one had more of an emphasis on Tony's, work-life balance, and part two was more of a way of building up Mandarin's character as a threat. So,
Yeah.
very fun.
Yeah.
Those were a blast to read. I'm interested
Yes.
to see the direction Way of X goes. For me, it wasn't a very promising first issue, and I'm gradually like just settling myself into oh no for new Iron Man.
Yeah. I I am probably a little more optimistic than you are on Way of X, and that may be foolish on my part, but I'm like, my personality is I want to give something a chance before I say, okay, no, they're not doing what I want them to do. Yeah, new Iron Man, definitely losing me. Especially if you don't even bother to check in with Tony in an issue, and it's not for any good reason that we can see. So, yeah, and we're taking a break this month. We're not going to have an Iron Man issue because we have to do this whole Heroes Reborn thing, which nobody asked for, and as I understand, nobody's really ordering. So, but as a reviewer, I'm probably going to cover it. But yeah, not a whole lot of exciting things coming up. But we are going to still cover Iron Man, and we're definitely going to be covering the old Iron Man comics because we're not done with the how does Tony get out of his armor situation yet. So we should pick up where we left off on that and see how that happens. And that's what we should expect for our next stream.
Alrighty. Thank you for joining us, Warzord. It was fun.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Warzord. And for those of you who are listening asynchronously, thank you for listening to our commentary on both the X-Men comics and the Iron Man comics. And we hope to speak to you again the next time we have one of these streams. Thank you very much for listening, and we are out.